Hello everyone. Welcome to Principles of Atatürk and History of Turkish Revolution course. In the last program of this course, we'll talk about the Turkish War of Independence. First, we'll discuss the Greek-Turkish War, then the developments in Anatolia during the War of Independence and military confrontations in eastern and southern Anatolia. We'll end the chapter with the Great Offensive and the Armistice of Mudanya. Let's start with the Greek-Turkish War. You'll remember that as a consequence of the Treaty of Paris, the Greek army landed in Izmir and its vicinity by killing whoever resisted them. Against the Greek occupations, the patriotic people in the Aegean region formed militia forces, that is, national forces, or Kuvayi Milliye in Turkish. These national forces couldn't resist much in the first confrontation, so the Greek troops moved further and occupied Ödemiş, Ayvalık, and Aydın in a short time. The congresses in Balıkesir, Alaşehir, and Nazilli had a great effect on people to get organized in Western Anatolia. Still, the representative committee in Sivas Congress decided to form a regular army and founded the Western Front Command. After the Turkish Grand National Assembly was opened, a regular army including all the military units in Anatolia was formed in June 1920, under the authority of the Ankara government. The new army was composed of former Ottoman Turkish soldiers, civilians, and non-Turkish Muslims who were against the occupations, but this army needed time to be trained. Meanwhile, Italians occupied Antalya, claiming that the city was their heritage from the Roman Empire, and declared their rule in Antalya and the Dodecanese Islands. Later, they occupied some other places in the southwest region. The Italian occupation didn't face any resistance in this region because they protected the Turks in these places against the Greeks, reconstructed bridges, and provided health service. While the Turkish Grand National Assembly armies were being organized, the new government in Greece decided to attack Eskişehir and Afyon to get Britain's support. The Greek army moved toward İnönü region and attacked the Turkish positions at İnönü. The Greeks were first stopped and then forced to retreat. This was the first success of the Grand National Assembly army against the Greek forces, and that helped the Ankara government to gain public trust. The victory at İnönü caused the Allied powers to propose a conference. They invited the Turkish Grand National Assembly to London Conference through the Istanbul government, but when they were rejected by Mustafa Kemal, the Ankara government was directly invited. This meant the recognition of the Turkish Grand National Assembly as an independent political entity. At the conference, Turkish delegations stated that Ankara wouldn't accept the Treaty of Sèvres and that a new peace treaty should be designed according to the National Pact. The Allied powers offered only minor changes, so the London Conference ended without a resolution. The Turkish Grand National Assembly couldn't get what was desired at the London Conference, but there were positive developments in favor of the Turks. In March 1921, Afghanistan and the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics recognized the Ankara government as an independent entity. Afghanistan was the first Muslim nation to do so. The Soviet Union, on the other hand, had already built close relations with Ankara, and in fact, the Bolsheviks had sent money, weapons, and ammunition to Turkey. With the Treaty of Moscow, the Bolshevik government recognized the total independence of Turkey and accepted the National Pact borders, as well as the abolition of the capitulations. After the London Conference, the Greeks, who were supported by Britain, attacked Turkish positions in Eskişehir. Their aim was to force Ankara to accept the terms of the Treaty of Sèvres. After Greek occupation in Bilecik, Pazarcık, Afyon, and Metristepe, the Turkish army counterattacked under the command of General İsmet Pasha. The Greek forces had to retreat with heavy losses. The victory at this battle, which was named the Second Battle of İnönü, strengthened not only the image and power of the Turkish Grand National Assembly, but also the position of Mustafa Kemal in the assembly. The Istanbul government and foreign powers, Britain, France, and Italy, tried to approach Mustafa Kemal to negotiate the peace terms, but they got nothing. While foreign powers were trying to build diplomatic relations with Mustafa Kemal, the Greeks were strengthening their position. In June 1921, they attacked Anadolu to cut the supply lines to Turks. They advanced beyond Afyonkarahisar-Eskişehir railway line toward Ankara and occupied Afyon, Kütahya, and Eskişehir. On Mustafa Kemal's order, İsmet Pasha withdrew the army to the east of Sakarya River. The Turkish headquarters was moved to Alagöz village near Polatlı. The opponents of Mustafa Kemal blamed him for the defeats in Kütahya and Eskişehir, but some deputies asked him to take full responsibility for fighting the Greek army. Mustafa Kemal was given full powers as commander-in-chief of the army. He also became the president of the Grand National Assembly. He ordered the mobilization of all the moral and material forces of the country. Upon this order, the army was supplied with arms, ammunition, gas, food, clothes, animals, and equipment. The Greek army, sure about their victory, started an offensive on August 23, 1921, and advanced 40 kilometers near Ankara. After a 22-day battle, the Turkish army had an unquestionable victory against the Greek forces at the Battle of Sakarya. After the Battle of Sakarya, Mustafa Kemal was awarded with the title of Gazi. The most important consequence of this battle was the signing of treaties with some countries. For example, the Treaty of Kars was signed with the Soviet Union and the border disputes were solved. The Allied powers tried to have peaceful relations with the Turks while they lost their trust in Greece. Italy had already built friendly relations with Ankara, and France signed the Treaty of Ankara, leaving Anatolia with the exception of Hatay. The French also recognized the National Pact instead of the Treaty of Sèvres. Now we'll have a look at the developments in Anatolia during the Turkish War of Independence, before we talk about the Great Offensive. The opening of the Turkish Grand National Assembly was the birth of a new Turkish state in Anatolia. For the first time in history, the assembly used the name Turkey for Anatolia. The Ottoman Sultan Vahdettin and the Grand Vizier Damat Ferit Pasha cooperated with the Allied powers, believing that there would be peace in the near future. The Istanbul government was against the national struggle, so they declared the national forces rebels, causing anarchy. The provocations of the Istanbul government caused rebellions in Anatolia against the nationalists after the Armistice of Mudros. In addition to the Istanbul government, the British also provoked the anti-nationalists. In fact, the first rebellion led by Ahmet Anzavur was a result of the British provocation, and Anzavur rebelled 3 times in the Balıkesir region. Later, other rebellions occurred in western and central Anatolia, namely in Düzce and its vicinity, in Konya, Yenihan, Yozgat, and Afyon. The Kurdish rebellions in eastern and southeastern Anatolia, on the other hand, mainly aimed for an independent Kurdish state, and the first of these was led by Ali Batı in Nusaybin. Later, Milli Tribe, which had helped the national forces save Urfa from French occupation, rebelled twice in Siverek and Viranşehir. Following this rebellion, Bahtiyar tribe rebelled in Diyarbakır. However, the biggest Kurdish rebellion was the Koçgiri rebellion, which covered a large area of Sivas, Tunceli, and Erzincan. All these rebellions were either suppressed by the National Resistance Forces or the Turkish Grand National Assembly Army. There were 2 other rebellions against the Ankara government. Those 2 rebellions came from the former members of the National Resistance Forces. Demirci Mehmet Efe rebelled because he didn't want to be part of the regular army. With the same reason, Çerkez Ethem staged a rebellion. In fact, Çerkez Ethem had been very active against the Greek occupation, and he had helped to suppress some early rebellions in Anatolia. This rebellion was put down after the First Battle of İnönü. When all these rebellions were over, the Turkish Grand National Assembly became the sole authority in Anatolia. In April 1920, as a precaution against the rebellions, the Assembly decreed a law named Treason Against the Motherland and formed courts of independence to implement this law. The Turkish War of Independence was not only in western Anatolia. The Turkish army also confronted the Armenians in eastern Anatolia. The military operation was a success, so the Armenians had to retreat and ask for truce. Later, the peace treaty of Gümrü was signed with the Armenians. This treaty was the first peace treaty that the Turkish Grand National Assembly signed with an internationally accepted state, Armenian Republic. In southeastern Anatolia, When the British and the French had a mandate agreement and Antep, Maraş, Urfa and Adana were given to the French, Mustafa Kemal gave orders to the Corps Command in Diyarbakır to prevent French occupation and to organize militia forces. Hoca Mehmet Efendi in Adana, Sütçü Imam in Maraş, Şahin Bey and Kılıç Ali in Antep, and Ali Said Bey in Urfa played crucial roles in resisting the French occupation in these cities. Eventually, the French army accepted defeat and signed the Treaty of Ankara. When Anatolia, with the exception of western regions, was under control, it was time for the great offensive against the Greek army. Believing in Mustafa Kemal, the Turkish Grand National Assembly, and its army, people in Anatolia donated money, clothes, animals, and their property for the preparations. Turks living abroad, charity organizations in foreign countries, Soviet Union, and Indian Muslims who kept their loyalty to the caliphate provided financial help too. The need for arms and ammunition was met through purchases from some foreign countries, such as Italy, and through workshops established to construct and repair weapons and ammunition. The commander of the Turkish Grand National Assembly Army, Mustafa Kemal, and his fellow commanders arranged the preparations for the Great Offensive in the greatest secrecy. They had meetings in Akşehir, where the headquarters of the Western Front was located. This headquarters was later moved to Kocatepe in Afyon. Meanwhile, the Greek army had built a strong defensive zone in the Afyon-Eskişehir line, but they were not expecting a Turkish attack so soon after the Battle of Sakarya. The Great Offensive started on August the 22nd. Turkish forces used wing formation tactics to encircle the Greek troops. When the Greek army lost its strategic advantage, they started to retreat toward Izmir in panic. Afyon and Dumlupınar were recaptured in a few days, and the retreat of the Greek forces was stopped. At that point, on August the 30th, Mustafa Kemal ordered a decisive attack. This battle is named as the Battle of the Commander-in-Chief. The Greek forces were either dead or taken prisoner. On September the 1st, the Turkish army started to advance west. Until the 8th of September, Uşak, Eskişehir, Balıkesir, Bilecik, Aydın and Manisa were freed from Greek occupation. It was September the 9th when the Turkish army entered Izmir. The Great Offensive ended with an unquestionable victory. After Izmir was free, the next line of offensive for the Turkish army was British-controlled Çanakkale region. When the Soviets announced that they were ready to help the Turkish armies in case of a new war, the Allied powers decided to start discussions of a ceasefire with Ankara, and soon, on October the 3rd, delegations representing the Turkish Grand National Assembly and the Allies met in Mudanya. The negotiations for an armistice between the Turkish Grand National Assembly and Britain, France and Italy ended in a favorable agreement on the 11th of October. According to the Mudanya Armistice Agreement, the hostilities between the two sides would end, the Greek occupation in Thrace was to be terminated, and the Greek forces were to be withdrawn to the left bank of the Maritsa River. And during this withdrawal, Turkish gendarmerie would be present in the region. The Greeks would hand over the administration of the region in 30 days. Both Turks and Greeks would keep their current positions without reinforcing their troops. The war against the Greeks, which lasted for 3 years, ended with the Armistice of Mudanya. Edirne, Eastern Thrace, and Istanbul were finally free. The National Pact was realized to a great extent, and the imperialists understood that they wouldn't be able to implement the Treaty of Sèvres. The next step was the peace conference to be held in Lausanne. So, this is the end of our program for the last chapter of Principles of Atatürk and History of Turkish Revolution course. In this video, we've discussed the Turkish War of Independence, from the Treaty of Sèvres to the Armistice of Mudanya. Refer to your book for more details. Goodbye.